It is said to have taken up residence in the southwest edges of the digital world. It rarely stays in the same place, so it journeys across the digital world while going around and putting stop to unusual phenomenon and signs of chaos. As we rejoin our heroes, Omnimon and Chaos Gallantmon had now decided it was time to train the two young Digimon in Wormmon and Vmon, as in order to prepare them for whatever was coming, they would need to work hard. And the beginning of their journey was so. As they would transverse the mountains after leaving the desert area, they would find a suitable location to train, as this traveling trip was to get Vmon and Wormmon back into shape, to unlock the powers that they once had as Imperialdramon, but use it for good. As the training would begin, Chaos Gallantmon and Omegamon would discuss every day the advantages and disadvantages of this training, as both Vmon and Wormmon, although tenacious, seemed to have lost the memories that they had, only remembering a little bit of their life prior to when they started their journey so long ago, as being trained against the stick obviously clearly showed that the tenacity the Digimon possessed was very high. However, the results they were getting was low. As days, weeks, and even months would pass, the two Digimon in rookie form would try their best to Digivolve but fail. And as the stick would weather, it seemed that even though training from dusk to dawn was not enough to get them to evolve. And, unfortunately, the nights would come and go, as it would be very obvious that they weren't making the progress needed. As one fateful night, Omegamon and Chaos Gallantmon discussed their options, realizing that unfortunately they're running out of time in order to get them to where they need to be, as many of the network keys that are still in play have either begun to disappear or have been struggled. As with the knowing presence of the dark forces still around, it wasn't obvious for the two of them to just simply stand by, as this night would be one of the nights to prove that they must hurry, as in the distance something was heard. Although for the two rookies who were sleeping, they were very unaware of the situation. However, Omegamon and Chaos Gallantmon were very aware, as the sounds of enemy Digimon were close by. And unfortunately, they were right. As both of the Digimon would lunge into action, they would be surprised as Dark Force Digimon appeared, as Devimon and Dark Tyrannomons appeared in order to destroy these newbies. However, they were unfortunately stopped by these two Digimon, as Omegamon and Chaos Gallantmon showed no mercy as they wiped them out. However, this was an alarming thing, as it was very clear that they wanted the two rookie Digimon. However, they did not know why. And this prompted Omegamon to make a choice, as there was another way to get them back into shape. However, since the digital world had been reconfigured some time ago, it would need to know where everything is, as there was a location it needed to find. And however, only one Digimon currently would be able to tell it where. And so, they began their journey again, as after leaving they would transverse the mountains of the digital area in search of a Digimon that Omegamon had met very long ago, hoping that it was still around. As Wormmon and Vmon clung to their respective teachers, they would see an amazing world that they had unfortunately never experienced, as although they fought so hard so long ago, they were still trapped, and with their memories gone, they did not remember much of the world. And in the distance in the mountain, the so-called Digimon that they were searching for was looming. As he would pass two Digimon that Omegamon vicariously had met. This being Leopardmon and Imperialdramon, meeting one of the more peculiar high-powered Digimon of the digital world, that being Genkumon. As Genkumon would meet these two Digimon, it's a wanderer of such. Many Digimon and many others of digital life forms have met Genkumon as he journeys across the digital world for his own reasons. And in this case, he would be confronted by the two Night Digimon, as they have been searching far and wide. And to the surprise of Genkumon, running into them is not much of a disgrace or any type of fear, as Genkumon is very friendly. And some of the Night Digimon, or most of the Digimon, are kind of unaware or not knowing how to deal with such a strange and aloof Digimon. Although very stubborn, Genkumon is friendly. And for Leopardmon and Ulforce Vidramon, both would discuss of how Imperialdramon had been defeated, and more importantly, Omegamon had returned to the digital world. And after hearing this, Genkumon asked where they could have been, as both seemingly had the same idea to meet once again. And in some time, they did. As Omegamon, Chaos Gallantmon, and the two rookies would eventually meet with Genkumon on the plains. As Genkumon would greet Omegamon, as it had been such a long time since they had met each other. Unfortunately, they weren't able to enjoy such pleasantries, as Omegamon would explain that they would need Genkumon's help, and not just for the immediate future, but for the sake of the digital world. As they would head off into the shrub savannah. As Genkumon would wonder what Omegamon wanted, both Chaos Gallantmon and Omegamon explained the situation of how the digital world is in thrust right now, as many different groups are in play, and these two rookies are going to be very important, as their power is necessary for the survival of the entire world. Although Genkumon isn't necessarily the most serious Digimon, he does take these threats and or these warnings seriously, as Omegamon was around during the last chaos, and if it wasn't for Genkumon and Omegamon's help to each other, the world could have been destroyed then. As an understanding, the two rookies would be told to go train on their own, simultaneously while this discussion continued, as although the two aren't necessarily unknowing of such things, their still childlike behavior doesn't help the two Digimon in their pursuit to train them well. As their training would begin for each other, Omegamon was explaining the situation of what they needed from Genkumon. And funny enough, as the ruckus got too loud and devolved from training into arguing, Chaos Gallantmon would stop Wormmon and Vmon, as although those two are close as brothers, sometimes they act too rambunctious. As Omegamon would explain to Genkumon that they need to get them to Digivolve and to start soon, as they'd been training for a very long time and there's been no results. As Genkumon would ask why they haven't been able to do so, it would be explained that they used the power of the Digimentals before, and unfortunately without them, they have never been able to access their full power from within. However, Genkumon would move towards the other rookies and explain to Chaos Gallantmon that he has an idea. In order to get them to understand and use their powers, it would be very much so the time for him to do what he does best, and that's fighting. As although Genkumon isn't too up to the idea of having students himself at the moment, he understands the importance of Omegamon and Chaos Gallantmon's mission, and would approach the two rookies, as he would explain to Wormmon, who was looking at him with his shining eyes, as in amazement of this mega-level Knight Digimon, that they would spar, as the two rookies would be surprised, Vmon more very bashful, and Wormmon very surprised. They would stand up to him, as, believe it or not, they have sparred against Omegamon and Chaos Gallantmon, although to not really much success. And in this case, they would face off against this Knight Digimon, and something would be learned from all sides. As Genkumon would stand still, he would tell them to come and attack. Surprisingly, Genkumon was surprised at the eagerness of Wormmon and Vmon, as both seemed to be ready to fight, as although he forgot who their teachers had been so far, their eagerness got him. As Wormmon would shoot web from its mouth, Vmon would get rallied up, as it would charge in to use the V headbutt. And both would actually connect, which shocked Genkumon. But this is Genkumon we're talking about. And as a Mega Level Digimon, he was just more surprised at how eager they were, not really the strength. And immediately, by pulsing some of his energy, he was able to blow both of them away, as both Vmon and Wormmon were completely taken back by the power. As Chaos Gallantmon was thinking about what this was about, Omegamon would stop Chaos Gallantmon and explain that this situation needs to happen, as in order for them to get stronger, Genkumon is testing their limits to see if he can bring anything out. And because it's not them, maybe the two rookies will not hold back, as maybe they've been holding back this time, so they didn't want to hurt Chaos Gallantmon or Omegamon, even though that seemed very impossible. As both would attempt again, the energy bubble that was flowing around Genkumon was simply keeping them at bay, as neither of them could even dent or get through it. And in one case, Genkumon was bored, so he kicked Wormmon away. As Wormmon went flying away in the distance, Veemon was shocked, as they seemingly realized that this situation was not good for either. And for Veemon, it was surprised when Genkumon grabbed it by the back of its neck as it struggled among its arms, telling Wormmon that if this is all they've got, he'll deal with the blue one first, and then deal with it. As Wormmon began to surge, it was terrified at the fact that Genkumon could easily destroy both of them, and with Veemon struggling, and Genkumon slowly tightening its grip, Veemon started to squirm less and less, as Wormmon began to puff. And as kind as Wormmon is, it doesn't want to see its brother in harm's way, as eventually its pulsing energy reached a limit. And when Genkumon said it's time to get rid of the blue one, the light of evolution shined once again, as the power of kindness would surge through Wormmon and cover the area. And when the light would finally dissipate, a new Digimon was standing, that being Stingmon. In all of its amazement and size, Wormmon had jumped into the air, now in its new form, as Stingmon stood proudly in the air, floating. As Genkumon would toss Veemon to the side, it was more impressed at the fact that Stingmon, who is now this brave and daring Digimon, was once that cute little bug that was on the ground. However, for Genkumon, Stingmon was in no position to simply stop, as the spinning striker was unleashed from its arm, as it would charge in to attack. Genkumon would flare its energy once again as Stingmon smashed its arm directly into that energy bubble, trying to pop it, as the balance was shocked, as Stingmon was even more impressed at the fact that so much power was surging from it. And Genkumon even amplified its energy just a little bit more to try to force Stingmon off, but Stingmon persisted until it couldn't take anymore and was flung off. This inspired Veemon, realizing that its brother, though so kind and so soft-hearted, would do that much for it. And in doing so, it charged back in to prove its strength to Genkumon. However, Veemon felt something amazing, as the feeling, that sensation, that belief that it felt in Stingmon's resolute behavior to keep fighting, to save others, began to bubble up, and Veemon itself began to feel something, a surge of energy, and once again, the light of evolution shined and dissipated around the area, and from it emerged another Digimon. Finally, Veemon had digivolved as well, as proudly ex-Veemon stood right behind Genkumon, and Genkumon could feel it. As it would slightly turn its head, it would be amazed, as now the shrimps were almost as tall as him. However, it didn't mean anything to his power. As Stingmon could notice, it was shocked, seeing that ex-Veemon was now there. Its brother was not going to let it simply fight alone, as all of a sudden the energy on its chest began to glow. As ex-Veemon was ready, the X-Laser was about to be fired, and when it did, it let loose. As the X-Laser would make contact, after being fired off, it began to smash into the bubble, as the combined strength caused explosions, as the energy rift was simply that. And to Genkumon's surprise, both of them had already turned into champions. But, as always, this was nothing to it. However, the exercise had proven fruitful, but it was time for the next lesson. As Genkumon jumped in the air, higher than even both of the Digimon who now could fly, it unleashed so much of its energy, catching both of them by surprise. And both were struggling, as the attack power was so much they both were unable to sustain it. As they started to flash back and forth, they were immediately pushed down, and they crash-landed into their rookie forms, as now Veemon and Wormmon simply laid there, as Genkumon was now still floating. It gave him a smile, believing that at least it had done what they needed and it accomplished so much. As it landed to the ground, Wormmon and Veemon righted themselves, somewhat feeling disappointed that they had failed in their match against Genkumon. But Genkumon couldn't have been prouder, as it realized that both of them had been holding back this whole time, and they were actually pretty strong, imagining what they could be if they actually get even stronger than this. As both their teachers would eventually land beside them. Chaos Gallantmon and even Omegamon were proud of the Digimon, as the rookies had finally made their breakthrough in order to find the strength within, and soon they might even be able to keep their champion forms permanent after this. As Genkumon was more impressed with the situation, he understood, and as the day would drag on, the dusk sky began to settle in as the sun was about to set. As they began to part ways, both groups, it was finally asked exactly of what Omegamon needed from Genkumon, as it needed to find the new area, the location of a place I had known once before, known as the Memory Stone, or at this point, the data core of the digital world. As after the situation that happened so long ago that brought those two together, Omegamon knew that Genkumon would probably know where the new location of it is. However, this was actually not going to be easy, as Omegamon, since returned to the digital world, was surprised by the layout, which is luckily why I was able to make it in time to the final battle against Imperialdramon in the first place, as luckily, the desert area doesn't change. In the case of where it needed to go, Genkumon would explain that in order to get to that area, it would need to traverse to the ice region. Now, as unfortunately, unlike before, there's actually a guardian of the data core of the digital world, and that guardian Digimon is one of a Night Digimon itself, being Kentorusmon. As Kentorusmon would be the guard of the area, protecting the data core as well as the Memory Stone. As it would be advised by Genkumon that if Omegamon and Chaos Gallantmon could find Kentorusmon, they would easily be able to know what they need to see, and whatever the training is they need to fill out, it would be able to help. As jokingly, Kentorusmon would tell both of the Mega Level Digimon that although Kentorusmon can be a bit of a stuffy pain in the butt, it's a very nice Digimon. And Kentorusmon will definitely help you if the endeavor is to save the digital world. As now, Omegamon would ask Genkumon one more time if it could assist them, as it would need love its help in protecting the digital world. And although Genkumon hasn't been too rightfully focused on trying to help anything except what it wants to do, it finally has a strike of justice, realizing that although having not thought of having any students of its own or acolytes, it actually really enjoyed taking care of the two rookies and helping them train. And in this case, it could pass down its knowledge to those who need it. So Genkumon would agree, as it would now head out in order to help the other remaining Night Digimon in the areas they need, as Genkumon was now an ally they could count on, including more and more of the Knights. As the group would head out, it was time to seek out memories long lost, and, if so, getting the Digimon closer and closer in order to make them strong enough to help in whatever was going to come. This was needed, as unknowingly, in the dark areas of the digital world, something is stirring. Something long lost has finally began to make its move, as it knows very soon it will be free. And in the net ocean itself, something else is stirring. Something that unfortunately no one could have seen, and when it comes out, it will cause another problem for the digital world. Now, when it comes to understanding and teaching others, sometimes it is best to take a different approach, as not every one teacher is the best for one person, and sometimes it takes a group of people in order to bring us forward. And in this case of our story, it is better to use a village in order to create a better person, because it's those collective wills and teachings that grow the person up. Do not let that get discouraged in the idea that only people in a specific area can teach you, because sometimes the best teachers are strangers, because sometimes some events have to be taught from a perspective that you don't understand. And moving forward, take this piece of advice for yourself as a part of the lessons. If you need to grow or find a new solution and you're stuck in your ways, sometimes it's completely best to look in areas where you wouldn't normally see it, because sometimes the areas where you don't want to go will lead you on the path to where you need to. As always, this is Brad from the Ad Army signing off, and for all of you out there to sign on.